Hey, how's it going? It's Alex, and today we're gonna go through how to add the Steamvr camera rig into Unity. It's actually really easy. All you gotta do is go to the Asset Store and search for the Steamvr plugin. If you don't have the Asset Store already up, you can go to Window, General, and then click on Asset Store, and it should pop up right away. Let's go to the search for Steamvr plugin, and then just click this import button or download or update or whatever you need to do to eventually see import. And then when you click on import, it'll do its thing. It'll ask what things you want to bring in. I'm just going to say all of them, bring them all in. And then that'll take a minute to load in. So let's give that a moment. Okay, and then once that's all loaded in, notice this scene is just a completely empty scene. It's just a main camera and a directional light. What I'm first going to do is add a plane to this, so we at least have some sort of reference as well as a cube. That way when we're actually in the VR setup, we can actually see some things. So the Steamvr asset has now been imported, so just go into that folder in the assets folder, and then you should see something called prefabs. Go into the prefabs folder, and then the camera rig is the one that you want to drag in here. Now this is the thing that creates the boundary for the player to be within, as well as the camera and the controller left and the controller right. And then we're going to move this slightly out of position of the cube so we can go near it, but not necessarily be on top of it. Okay, cool. And that's it. From here, all we have to do is click the play button, and it'll ask us to, it'll just go right into the VR thing. However, if this is your first time going into Steamvr, you'll get a pop-up that looks something very similar to this, if not exactly this, which is talking about this thing they have called Steamvr Input, and that basically allows you to map the controls to specific output. One thing to note about when it asks about if you'd like to generate the actions, when you click yes, it's going to say the same thing twice sometimes, but then just click yes again. But the third one is actually saying, it looks like it's missing actions.json. Would you like to use an example file? So we're going to go ahead and click yes, because we want to make sure that's generated. Otherwise, we'll run into errors every single time. And then a window like this will pop up after that. If you want to, you can click Open Binding UI or mess with any of this. And the Open Binding UI looks something like this with this fancy edit button, and you can map different things. So instead of just a click, when you double click, it's a different action. We're not going to go through all that because it's honestly too much and deserves its own video. Because for the sake of this video, all you really need to do is click Save and Generate, and that'll go through the input generation and just automatically create the necessary requirements for a simple VR setup. It allows you to have the controller left and right. It allows you to have the base stations and the camera. It just has everything automatically set up for you. So when you click Save and Generate, during the process of it, it'll ask you if you want to modify the scene and save the changes or not. I like to click Save because there's probably some things that you've done that you haven't realized. So just make sure you click Save just in case. And it'll just it'll generate the input thing for you. This window will actually stay up, so you can either just move it to another monitor or close out of it entirely. I'm just going to close it out completely because we're not going to need it at this point. One last thing to note, when you run it, if you don't see the models of the controllers in the actual game scene, make sure that if you're looking at your Steamvr panel, that all of your firmware is up to date on your base stations, as well as your Steamvr controller, your Vive controllers, because for whatever reason, I was messing around with it earlier and my firmware was not up to date, and I was running into some issues. So make sure your stuff's all up to date. So assuming it's up to date and you've clicked Save and Generate, you should just be able to click play. Here, let me actually I'm gonna back up the camera rig on this side because I believe it's facing the other way. So if I click play, should be able to load up here, and I'll turn on one of my controllers. And in front of me, you should see the controller just loading up perfectly fine. And then if I turn around, you can see the cube, right? And everything's just positionally there. And that's all there is to it for setting up Steamvr in Unity. So comment below if you have any questions or if you have any suggestions on future tutorials and videos, as well as make sure to hit the subscribe button because there's going to be a lot more just like this. Thanks.